My boss fired me for a stupid mistake, so I ruined his entire bloodline. You ever work for someone so cruel you start fantasizing about their obituary? That was my boss, Marshall Harlan. 49 years old, gelled hair, gold watch, and the soul of a clogged toilet. Marshall didn't run a company. He ran a kingdom. And we weren't employees. We were peasants with inboxes. He made us clock in 5 minutes early and fined us for being 1 minute late. He called us by job titles instead of names. My official identity in that building? Content Asset 07. I was just a copywriter. Decent at my job. Quiet. Reliable. Exactly the kind of employee no one notices, which is why I think he hated me even more. Marshall had a rule. If you had personal problems, you dealt with them outside of professional obligations, which, in Marshall speak, meant don't even think about blinking if your mom's on life support. Mine was 3 weeks, stage 4 cancer. I worked while she faded. Typed press releases while she forgot my name. Marshall knew. He didn't care. The day she died, I got 2 emails. One reminding me about an overdue deck, and another warning me not to take extended bereavement without HR pre-clearance. I showed up the next morning, dead inside, just like he wanted. And then, I made a mistake. Not a real mistake. I attached the wrong file to an email. Sent version 4 instead of version 5. The client didn't even notice, but Marshall did. He called me into his glass office, you know, the kind designed to humiliate you publicly, and said, "You've been slipping. Frankly, I'm disappointed. Your emotional volatility is creating operational drag." He said that, word for word. Then he handed me a folder. Termination notice. Effective immediately. Best of luck, he said, like he was doing me a favor. I left without a word, walked straight past the front desk, down the elevator, out onto the street, and laughed. Not because it was funny, because something inside me snapped. And when it snapped, it didn't break, it sharpened. The idea didn't come all at once. Revenge like this doesn't hatch, it ferments. But it started later that night, while doom scrolling LinkedIn with one hand and holding a whiskey bottle with the other. That's when I saw her. Natalie Harlan. His wife. She'd posted a photo. One of those boring women in leadership headshots. Polished blazer, hollow smile. Caption, proud to be helping build a better world. I snorted. Marshall didn't believe in better worlds. He believed in control. And I wondered, what if I could take that from him? So I messaged her. Just a casual compliment. Loved your article on leadership. Thoughtful stuff. She responded in 5 minutes. We talked, we clicked, we met for coffee, then dinner, then something more. She was charming, intelligent, and, most importantly, absolutely over her husband. He micromanages our marriage, she said once, like I'm a calendar invite. 6 weeks later, she was in my bed, her blazer on my floor, her breath on my neck, and that's when I knew this wasn't about sex. This was about surgery. I was going to dissect Marshall's entire legacy, starting with the woman who shared his last name. 2 months later, she was pregnant. She cried when she told me, said it felt like a new beginning. I asked what she'd name it. She smiled and said, "You, of course," and I wasn't even close to finished. Next on my list wasn't someone I expected. It was Marshall's younger sister, Delilah. She wasn't like him. She was warm, outspoken, hated suits, and hosted weekly wine nights on her balcony. I found out through a chance meetup at a networking event hosted at the art gallery she curated. I told her I was freelancing now. Got canned for caring too much, I joked. She laughed. Corporate's a cult. Welcome back to real life. We bonded fast. Weekly wine nights became daily chats, then rooftop dinners, then nights she didn't want to end. Delilah wasn't jaded like Natalie. She was hopeful, the kind of woman who believed she could fix broken things, like her reputation-obsessed brother. "I always thought he treated people like pawns," she said one night, "but I didn't know how bad it got until you told me. I didn't even have to seduce her. She kissed me first. One night, during a thunderstorm, she told me she loved me. 2 weeks later, she told me she was pregnant. I played shocked, then grateful, then scared. All the right emotions. Because this wasn't just a baby. This was a brick, and I was building a tower of children with my name on it, right on top of the empire Marshall worshipped. Then came his mother, Margaret Harlan. That took more finesse. Margaret was old money. Pearls, perfume, piano lessons at 6. The kind of woman who wore white gloves unironically. But Marshall? He was her favorite. Golden boy. Firstborn. My Marshall, she called him. Until I changed that. I met her at a fundraiser. Wore a suit. Spoke in her dialect. Soft compliments. Firm handshake. Just enough humble brag to feel expensive, but not showy. She invited me to tea, then brunch, then a family garden tour, where she introduced me as the most thoughtful young man I've met in years. The shift didn't happen overnight. It happened in slow conversations about legacy, bloodlines, and preserving what's precious. I let her talk. I listened. And when she hinted that her late husband had disappointed her in the end, emotionally, not just financially, I asked what she missed most. Passion, she said, and feeling seen. A week later, she invited me to her summer home, alone. What happened there wasn't romantic. It was surgical, clinical, like transplanting a virus into its host. She called me the future. When she told me she was pregnant, she cried from joy. "God gave me a second chance," she whispered. I didn't correct her. 3 women, 1 child each, all growing in the shadows of a man who never looked over his shoulder. But I wasn't done. I wanted Marshall to feel it, taste it, not just in his family tree, but in his daily breath. I started small. His email autocorrect started malfunctioning. Simple phrases like schedule meeting became sacrifice goat. His clients noticed. Then his ergonomic chair lost 2 screws, just enough to tilt violently every time he leaned back. Then came the leaks. His water cooler started making gurgling noises loud enough to sound like someone choking. His keyboard replaced itself. His phone calls dropped randomly. He started twitching, checking cameras, accusing interns. "Someone's messing with me," he snapped one day. No one believed him, but he knew. Somewhere deep in his bones, he knew. And that's when I moved to phase 3. Up next, his daughter. His perfect, Harvard-educated, engagement ring-flashing daughter. She wasn't ready. Her name was Clara Harlan, Daddy's golden girl. 500,000 followers, LinkedIn influencer, and exactly the kind of woman who posted 5-slide carousels about resilience and professional empathy while voting to cut sick leave at her startup. I met her at a speaking event. I didn't have to say much. Clara talked enough for both of us. About tech, her fiancé, her 5-year plan. All I had to do was nod and look interested. She noticed me. Of course she did. I was different from her plastic world of MBA bros and espresso cocktail mixers. I wore worn leather, told sad stories with smiling eyes. I made vulnerability look like a flex, and she fell hard. It started with coffee, then DMS, then long rants about how her fiancé just doesn't get me. I didn't need to break them up. She did that herself. 1 week after I told her my mom died, and my boss fired me on the same day. Tears, then kissing, then guilt. I pretended to be reluctant. I played the good man resisting temptation. That made her chase harder. Clara was impulsive, emotional, and when she said, "This isn't just a fling," I kissed her forehead and said, "I know." 4 weeks later, she missed her period, then another. She told me she was pregnant in a parking lot. She cried, said she didn't know what to do. I smiled. "Let's raise this child together," and she agreed. Just like that, the man who fired me over a PDF was going to be a grandfather to my child, again, but I wasn't done, not without the crown jewel. Marshall's son, Benjamin, had a fiancée, sweet, quiet, blonde, fresh out of grad school. Her name was Melanie, the final thread. I knew where she volunteered, a pet rescue. So I adopted a cat I didn't need just to meet her. Brought him back the next week, said he wasn't adjusting. We talked, she laughed, said I had gentle energy, said I seemed safe. That was her mistake. I never mentioned her fiancé. She never mentioned him either. I became her friend, then confidant, then late night wine and cry buddy, and finally, I became her secret. She asked me if I thought she was a bad person. I said no. I said she was a person in a bad engagement. She said she didn't love Benjamin anymore, and then she told me she was pregnant. I almost laughed. She said she didn't want to tell anyone. I said, whatever you decide, I'll support you, and she decided to keep it. 5 pregnancies, 1 family, all traced back to me. But Marshall didn't know, not yet. So I made sure he found out in the most poetic way possible. A family dinner, all of them there, all the women glowing, all the women smiling. He sat down at the head of the table like the king of nothing, and then Natalie said it. We're all expecting, isn't that beautiful? And Margaret added, they're all naming the babies after the same man. Marshall's face twitched. Who? And then Delilah said it, my name, slowly. I walked in behind him and said, hi Marshall, long time no see. He didn't speak, couldn't. His kingdom had fallen from the inside out, but his punishment was just beginning. After that dinner, Marshall changed. He didn't shout, he didn't rage, he went quiet, and quiet men are the easiest to break. The next day, his car alarm started going off every night at 3:13 a.m. for no reason. The dealership found nothing. I knew why. I installed the trigger myself. His morning coffee started tasting off. Not poison, just slightly bitter, like regret. The elevator in his apartment stopped on the 13th floor every time he wrote it. There was no 13th floor. He asked the concierge. They didn't believe it. Then came the messages. Slipped under his door. Printed notes with baby names. All mine. Benjamin Jr., Noah, Leo, Nathaniel. All suggestions from his family members. I left a different name each night. His dreams, I ruined those too. I got a burner phone and sent him texts at 2 a.m. Your bloodline belongs to me now. Can't fire a legacy. Call me grandpa. He tried blocking the number. I had 10 more. He went to the police. Said someone was harassing him. They asked for proof. He brought a name. My name. I hadn't used it in months. Not with the women. Not on the phone. Not on paper. Marshall had no evidence. No case. Just a look in his eyes that screamed paranoia. They labeled him emotionally unstable. Told him to take a leave of absence. So he did. He tried to escape. Rented a cabin upstate. Disconnected from everything. So I sent him baby announcements. 5 envelopes. 5 sonograms. All with the same note. We're naming him after someone special. Back in the city, I started visiting each of them again. Natalie and I built the nursery together. She painted clouds on the ceiling. Delilah and I picked names. She liked literary ones. Atticus, Holden, Clara made scrapbooks. Melanie knitted booties. Margaret prayed. And they all called me the same thing. The man who gave them purpose. Marshall, he was unraveling. The last time I saw him, he was sitting alone at a diner. Same clothes for days. He looked smaller, sunken, like the universe itself had filed a restraining order against him. He looked up, saw me, didn't say a word, so I smiled, sat next to him, whispered, you built a company, I built a dynasty. Then I left him there, and I never looked back. After the diner, Marshall disappeared from the public eye. No social posts, no LinkedIn rants, no status updates, but I knew where he was. His sister told me he'd checked into a wellness retreat, a nice way of saying mental rehab for men who can't handle losing everything. Meanwhile, I thrived. Every baby shower was a coronation. 5 women, 5 pregnancies, 5 variations of my smile on the way. At each party, someone would ask, are they all? And each mother would smile. Yes, he's the father. No confusion, no shame, just admiration. They called me a gift, a miracle, a second chance. Even Margaret said, it's like he was sent to restore the Harlan name. If only she knew how much I'd enjoy dragging it through the dirt before polishing it with my own. And then, just when life couldn't be more poetic, Marshall returned, not to work, not to his family, but to intervene. He burst into Melanie's baby shower, uninvited, eyes wild, voice trembling. He's using you, he shouted. He's manipulating everyone. He's destroying our family. Silence. Melanie stood, one hand on her stomach, the other gripping mine. She looked at him and then looked at me. He's the only one in this family who actually loves me, she said. Then Clara stepped in and supports us, Delilah, and listens, Natalie, and respects me. Even Margaret, his mother, whispered, he's everything you never were. Marshall cracked. Right there in the middle of a baby-themed cupcake buffet, he screamed, threw a gift, stormed out. It made the local paper. Wealthy executive removed from event after breakdown. The board of his company saw it. They forced early retirement. The condo booted him. His personal assistant went viral with a TikTok titled, I worked for a psycho and his empire just imploded. It got 6.8 million views. Meanwhile, I moved in, not with just one of them, all of them. Different days, different beds, different lives. And when the babies were born, I was there for each one, cutting the cords, cradling my legacy, holding the future in my name. The final blow wasn't loud. It wasn't messy. It was printed. See, I'd kept every message Marshall ever sent me, every threatening email, every HR denied time off request, every cold response about my mother's illness. I published it all on a blog, anonymously, with timelines, screenshots, testimonies from other ex-employees who came out of the shadows once they saw mine. It went viral. The title, The Corporation That Profited from Grief. And Marshall, he couldn't even sue. He had no job, no credibility, no allies, just a last name, shared by 5 new babies with mine. He tried to reconnect with his family, offered to help, offered guidance, even gifts. They declined. They already had someone who painted nurseries, who showed up to appointments, who read parenting books and built IKEA furniture, someone they trusted, someone who wasn't him. I ran into him one last time, outside a pharmacy. He looked old, not in age, but in spirit, like the color had been drained from him slowly, one name at a time. He stared at me, and I smiled. You look like you've seen a ghost, I said. No, he replied. Worse. Then he walked away. No comeback, no insult, no fight left in him, just silence. And now, I sit in a park with 1 baby on my chest and 4 others playing nearby, 5 mothers rotating between laughter and chaos, a legacy of joy built from one man's downfall, not out of spite, not anymore, but because some men build empires through money, others through name, and I didn't just destroy his bloodline, I replaced it. He erased my career over a typo, so I rewrote his bloodline with my name on every birth certificate.